I'm the youngest of 5 in my family. There's 4 boys, including myself, and then there's my oldest sister. She's 17 years older than me. What's wonderful about having a 17-year-old, or a sister who's 17 years older than you, is she feels like she can speak to you like she's your mother. And whenever she tries to do that to me, I remind her that for the first year of my life, she actually wasn't around. She was in Germany on an exchange with her high school, and my mother sent her videos of me doing adorable baby things. And she thought it would be a good idea to record over them with MTV music videos. So I love my sister. My 3 older brothers, I grew up completely and utterly in their shadow, and I loved it. They were all good at sport, all talented, all good at school, all did really well. And as I was growing up, I thought, far out, being their little brother is pretty amazing. Ko waia hau, kua hau tetahi o ngā rau, kua taka mai te puhi kai ori ori o te nehe nui, no Ngāti Manipoto a hau. Tina a koe matua, tina te mihi ki a koe mo tō iwi hoki, nā rātou I toka tui mua te raupatu o tō whenua, ko Bastion Point, kaue e ware, maumahara. Kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Trent Hohaia, and I'm really privileged to be in front of you here today to speak about something that I'm deeply passionate about, and that is the repatriation of traditional Māori learning methods into the homes of whanau across Aotearoa, oral storytelling. Because I believe that through storytelling, what we're able to do is find identity in the present and then better navigate the future through connection to the past. So that's what I'm going to be exploring with you guys all today. I was born and raised in South Auckland in a place called Takanini. It's between Manurewa and Papakura, and I loved it. Growing up in the south side, all the different cultures, all the different people, different languages, different kinds of food, all those things. I loved being from South Auckland, and I thought, far out, being from South Auckland's pretty amazing. Did all of my schooling in South Auckland. I wasn't always the best student, and like on my report it used to say things like, Trent is a distraction to other people in class. And I feel like that's more on them than on me. Nevertheless, it was written. But I always did really well at school, and school kind of came really easy to me. I was always at the top, if not near the top of pretty much every class I was in, which really surprised me because I'm Māori. And all throughout my life growing up, I knew, although no one ever explicitly said it to me, that being Māori and achieving academically were separate things. That they couldn't be the same thing. And I thought, you know what? It's probably because I'm only half Māori. So the other half of me is probably the smart half. And being Māori can't be smart. So I had this conundrum. Actually, I was this conundrum. Here I was at high school, talented, capable, achieving well, incredibly good looking. Yet I was Māori and had this idea that, man, this can't be me. So either I'm not Māori or I can't be intelligent. And it shook me. And I began to deny who I was. I remember this in English class. There was a movie called Utu. It's a really good New Zealand-made film. And there's a scene which scared one of the girls in class. And I'm really embarrassed by what I said to her. But what I said to her when she got scared is I said, don't worry, Māoris aren't real. And you laugh, but honestly, that was my identity about myself for years. This thought that who I was some relic. As I graduated high school, a year after I graduated, I went overseas. First time in my life. First time I've been away from my family for more than a week at a time. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to find out who I am by traveling the world. I'm going to find my purpose in life. And unequivocally, wherever I went, people asked me, where are you from? I was frustrated. Traveled all the way around the world to discover who I was, and people kept asking me where I'd come from. And so I said, as they kept asking me this question, I started asking it of myself. Actually, where am I from? I knew I was from South Auckland. I knew I was Māori, but I didn't know a whole lot else. And the things I used to identify myself actually had very little to do with me. They were all about my family. While I was traveling, I went to London to visit my oldest brother, who still lives there. He's coming home next year with his wife and his new baby. I'm really excited. And as I visited him, I stayed with him for about a month. And on one of the nights, we went to a pub, because that's what older brothers like to do, take your little brother to the pub and teach him the facts of life. I wasn't aware that my brother knew those facts, but clearly he thought he did. And as we're sitting in the pub, we started talking, and we ended up talking about our family. And I had what I can only call a revelation. My revelation was this. For the first 19 years of my life, I'd been a worse son to my family than they deserved. As my brother and I started talking about the sacrifices and the contributions my parents had made, not just to me, but to all my siblings, I started to understand myself in relation to their sacrifice. What does this call out of me? Man, I'm the inheritor of these acts. My father left a 6-figure sum job to teach my brothers how to play rugby, to coach their team. 6 figures. And he left it. My father's the kind of man who will fix things you don't know are broken. My mum is the kind of person who will figure out that you're the one that broke them and then go tell your father. And I love my parents. So after this conversation, I came home. 2 jobs. 1, discover who I was. 2, become a better son for my family. So I enrolled in university because I thought, far out, they've input so much into me that I need to, particularly my mother, but also my father, have put so much into me to prepare me well for academics. The least I can do is achieve well for them. So I signed up to university. In the first 2 years, I was on the Dean's List of Academic Excellence, reserved for the 2% highest achievers in the faculty, regardless of your year. I received the Māori Academic Excellence Award 2 years in a row, and I achieved an A average my entire time at university, never getting anything less than about a 90% on anything I submitted. I don't particularly care about grades. I don't see, personally, but I knew that what I needed to do was work hard for my mother. But the funny thing that happened was, I was at the top of all these classes I was in, and I heard comments like this. Oh, it's really good to see a Māori boy at the top of the class. And while these were well-intentioned, what they served to remind me was, man, academic achievement and being Māori are not the same thing. If you're Māori, you're unlikely to achieve here. And I thought that by doing well, maybe I'd change the stereotype. But actually, what amazes me is that I perpetuated the stereotype because I became seen as abnormal, exceptional, that it wasn't normal for Māori to do this. So actually, I wanted to come closer to my identity as Māori. And by doing well, I was going further away from it. And my identity crisis persisted. Who am I if these things are happening? A couple of years after I graduated university, I was staying at a marae in Golden Bay in Tauranga. And I met a man named Makasako Hata-Brown, and he told me a story. He told me the story of how in the 13th century, Polynesian navigators, my ancestors, using their depth of connection to the environment, to the understanding of the flight patterns of birds, ocean currents, and starlight, using all those things to navigate to arrive in Aotearoa here today. Now, the navigation of the Pacific Ocean by my ancestors academically was thought of as a mistake. There was this idea called the Great Wave, which is racist in its simplicity. The idea was a lot of Polynesians were out in their waka, and a great wave just happened to sweep them from Micronesia all the way down to Aotearoa. And I remember this because it made me angry to hear that. And then I heard a sentence that I'll never forget because it's a sentence that's changed my life. As he was telling the story, he said this. Jared Diamond, a prominent academic, was asked at a conference, what is the greatest achievement of mankind? Is it the curing of polio? Is it the 1960s civil rights movement in South America? Is it the putting of a man on the moon? Is it the fall of the Berlin Wall? And he said, unequivocally, without a doubt, it is the navigation of the South Pacific by early Polynesian explorers. The idea that they stumbled upon Aotearoa is as likely as finding a speck of dust in the eye of a needle, the needle in a haystack, the haystack in a paddock, 1 hectare wide, full of haystacks. And something in me shifted. Suddenly, achieving great things and being Māori were no longer separate. In fact, they'd never been separate. But these narratives had dominated my idea of what it meant to be who I was. And through connection to story, I was able to find an identity in the present and understand my purpose moving forward. Much like when I spoke to my brother in a pub, understanding my parents' sacrifices, I found purpose and began to act. And that's what I'm passionate to talk to you all about today, is the power of oral storytelling. Connecting to your culture, my culture, everyone's culture's history in order to understand identity in the present and navigate the future well. Yes, that's what I'm here to talk about. So after I heard this, I just fell in love with oral storytelling traditions. And I wanted to understand, what is it about these things that helps ground us in identity? What's the functional aspect of this? This year I've started a social enterprise called Tau Tito Tito, which means to compose verses in unison. So the idea is 2 people singing the same song, making up the words at the same time, which I think is beautiful. And as I started this, I wanted to understand, the function of these things. And these are the things that I learnt. Storytelling is relationally developmental. Maya Angelou says it like this. People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. The act of sitting down with someone, not taking photos of your coffees, not checking your phone to see who else wants to hang out, the act of sitting down with a person face to face and sharing stories, we have no idea the capacity our attention has to affect the lives of those around us. Words create worlds. Storytelling is not just descriptive, it's prescriptive. So this is the basic idea of advertising. If you repeat a message enough, it becomes truth. So the narratives that affected my life and will affect some of your lives are repeated enough that they become true. So advertising, the basic premise is, buy this product and you will be better off, or don't buy this product and you'll be worse off. Now those ideas, hearing those once or twice a day, that's fine. But if we continue to hear these ideas that talk about our self-worth degrading without something, thousands of times a day, repeated every day for the entirety of our lives, that begins to do something, because storytelling is prescriptive. It creates worlds. Words create worlds. Oral storytelling gives knowledge a soul. So the reason some forms of esoteric knowledge of Māori and Samoan, Tongan, Polynesian, Fijian, and many other cultures around the world have survived thousands of years of migration and colonization and all of the other things they've survived is because it had a face. There are countless books. I always hear this from first years at university. Oh man, I hate learning theory. And I think there's people that have written these theories that sat with other people, sent letters, and communicated face to face, and this is their life's work and we hate it because there's no face to it. That's one of the reasons sometimes theory can just be boring. But this is perhaps the most important thing I learnt. So the Māori word for story is pūrākau. Pūrākau is a compound word. The first word, pūtake, or base, foundation. The second word, rākau, tree. So when we talk about our stories, what we're talking about is the base of our trees, the roots. Now, if you know anything about Māori, the Māori creation story, often called mythology, wrongly, Tāne Mahuta wanted to separate his parents, Ranginui and Papa Tuanuku, because he understood that for there to be a world of light, he needed to separate his parents, who were in perpetual embrace, so great was their love for one another. He talked to his siblings. Some of them said, yeah, bro, let's do it. Some of them said, no, don't make mum and dad mad. But he resigned himself. He said, no, we have to do this. And he lay his back against his mother, and he put his feet against his father, and he began to push. And as he did so, he separated and created the world we have today. Our word for story is base of the tree. Tāne Mahuta is the atua, the god of our forests. So for Māori, when we talk about stories, our pūrākau, our roots, we're literally talking about the things that created our world, that give our world shape. No wonder connecting to these things is so important. No wonder we can find identity in connecting to the past through story. Oh, yeah, no wonder. Pūrākau, sorry, I keep breaking you. Thank you. Oh, so why is this all important? What's the point of oral storytelling? What's the value? Why do we need to know this stuff? Currently in Aotearoa, we have the highest suicide rate in the developed world. Our young men, and our young Māori men specifically, are 1.5 times higher than the national average, have a 1.5 higher likelihood to commit suicide than the national average, which is already the highest in the world. We have high rates of domestic violence. We have huge rates of infant mortality. We are an increasingly isolated generation. We spend less time face-to-face with other humans than at any time in history. Any time in human history. These things are creating an identity, I believe, that is born out of disconnection, not connection. We're seeing mental health rates rise, and part of that is because mental health we're getting better at diagnosing it, but part of it, I believe, is because we have generations growing up not understanding their connection to the world because they're connected to temporal things that are not based in anything that's had enduring, lasting contributions to the world. And it's not right. Those things happening in our country, I think we all just believe they're not right, no matter how you slice it. And they're intricate problems with different causes and different ways of solving them. But all of us know that those things are not what we want our Aotearoa to be. There's a tree called the kahikatea. It's a native tree to Aotearoa, and it has no taproots. Taproots are the root systems that dig deep into the earth to provide stability for trees so that when faced with challenges from the wind, rain, sleet, snow, earthquakes, that they can remain strong, and our trees don't have them. The kahikatea has existed since the Jurassic period, so it's got good at surviving. And the way it's done that is it's learnt to intertwine its roots with other kahikatea around it and other trees. It's pūrākau, it's stories. finding stability through connection to others. Alone in a field, a kahikatea is vulnerable to the shifting of the earth, the shifting and moving of the wind, the rain. But connected, finding relationship with others through sharing of story, our forests can remain strong. The Māori word for forest is ngā here. Ngā means many, or plural. Here means connections. So when we looked into the forest, what my ancestors saw was the mutually beneficial, mutually dependent, interwoven, interconnected relationships that were able to sustain the diversity of life. Oh, cut it out. That's what we saw when we looked into it. And it's easy to see in Aotearoa today, with the problems we have, it's easier then to understand the health of our forests, relationally. Who are we sharing our stories with? What value do we place on the roots that we send out in relationship to others? Or are we standing alone in a field? Is that why so many of us are falling? I'm deeply passionate about this stuff. I love it because I believe that the problems we're facing today are the result of disconnection. But I have this dream. What will it look like in 100 years if the next generation of young Māori, but of young people in general, are surrounded from birth, from cradle to career, with stories that affirm who they are, tell them that they're relevant, meaningful, capable, talented, purposed with greatness, and that being whoever you are, and for me being Māori, is not a burden, but it's a gift. I believe that through connection, through understanding ourselves, not in isolation, but through connection to the past through story, like I understood myself at hearing the sacrifices of my parents, causing me to find identity and then move to enroll in university and do all those things and achieve well there, finding connection to the past, giving meaning to the present, helping us better navigate the future. Who might we be if our identity is not based on just who I am, what I wear, what I do, the things I like, but if we send out our story, we send out our connection to others, that we might achieve stability relationally with all of us. I don't know how many of us there are in this room, but all of you, as Rez said, have a story. Don't doubt the power of your own story. What's interesting about a forest, about a ngāhere, is that trees aren't made strong because they are strong. They're made strong because of their relationship and connection to others. The kahikatea has survived it's from the Jurassic period, 180 million years. Long-term, intergenerational, transformative change is possible through connection to relationship. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi kia koutou katoa, kua taumai ki tēnei, hei whakawhānui o koutou hiningaro me o koutou hirika pō. Thank you all very much.